Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm Paige. I'm an alcoholic. And yeah, welcome everyone. Ooh, it gets the blood pumping when there's chaos. Used to be addicted to it. Now I'm like, oh, no, thank you. Just like calm vibes. So where we're going to be picking up today is the foreword to the first edition. And it's on page XIII. So XIII, foreword to the first edition. And what we did was last week, we made it up to the very first paragraph of the foreword to the first edition, which is such a helpful paragraph. It explains what Alcoholics Anonymous is, what we do, and even points to what it means to be an alcoholic. And so that was a beautiful paragraph to dive in. And now what we're going to do, second full paragraph, and we're going to be diving in. Bless you. Sorry, it's the worst when I catch people sneezing. You're going to get a bless you or a gesundheit, whether you want it or not. So it says, it is important that we remain anonymous because we are too few at present to handle the overwhelming number of personal appeals which may result from this publication. Now it's like, girl, what are we talking about? So when we talk about anonymity in Alcoholics Anonymous, what we're not solely talking about is secrecy. We're confidentiality, and that is fair that we offer that confidentiality for those that want it. But when we talk about anonymity is selfless service and humility. That is what we're talking about. But I will point out, in the early days, foreword to the first edition, as the book went out to the world in 1939, well, the anonymity was, because like, girl, if I throw out this book, I'm going to get so overwhelmed, I'm not going to know what to do. There's going to be so many people reaching out for help. That was why they were wanting to stay anonymous, so that they weren't going to be overwhelmed. We're going to talk about that here in a second. So it says, being mostly business or professional folk, we could not well carry on our occupations in such an event. We would like it understood that our alcoholic work is an avocation. And there's a lot of big words in there. Are they the word of the day? Probably not, because it would make sense if the word of the day was in the book. But what we're talking about is that idea that the book goes out to the world and people are going to get copies of this book. And they're going to read this book. There's AA meetings in New York, in Cleveland, and in Akron, Ohio. But it's the worldwide fellowship that we have today did not exist in 1939. I would get a copy of this book and be alone in the world and trying to follow the directions that it has to get well. That's what we would be trying to do. And that is an overwhelming proposition. Like that idea, imagine sending out a book. And we're going to see the numbers, bear with me, in the next chapter. Imagine you send this book out to the world and immediately you get about 10 newcomers reaching out to you all at once, asking for help. A little bit overwhelming, right? And that's what the numbers were going to be. And when it says we would like it understood that our alcoholic work is an avocation, I only advocate. I do not vocate. Avocation, as Rob put in the chat, means to be done for free. It is not paid work, not paid employment, free. It is a passion. And so, and I'm going to point something out. This is a radical idea. The United States, the world is just coming out of the Great Depression, still very much in it, just beginning to come out. And it's that idea that a bunch of alcoholics are going to help other alcoholics for free? Like, that is a wild idea. Like, they're not going to get paid for it. I mean, this is a time where people are like, I got to get my side hustle on. I gotta make some money. They're doing it for free. So that understanding that this alcoholic work is not to be paid for. That is a radical idea. And in 1939, when a lot of people were struggling financially, it is something that we often take for granted, that there are no fees or dues to show up at this meeting. If you want to we'll talk about the seventh tradition here in a bit, but the sponsorship is not paid for, that it is all completely free. I mean, that That is incredible. And that is the genesis, the beginning of Tradition 8. So if you're writing in your book, now I have a rumor that that's what the cool kids are doing. You can make a little note right when it says we would like it understood that our alcoholic work is an avocation, that what we are talking about there is the 8th tradition, that we are non-professional, that this work is done for fun and for free. And again, a lot of times what we're going to see as we go through this page, the foreword to the first edition, the genesis of the traditions, they haven't been agreed upon, ratified, even formalized or written down, but we see these basic ideas. And often if you're like me, when I come here, I'll see the steps and I'm like, I don't want to do those. And then I see the traditions and I'm like, that's like Greek. You're throwing out a completely different language. It makes no sense to me. And sometimes you find yourself in a traditions meeting, and let's be honest, at first it happens on accident. Unless you're not like me, and I am just about them today. Listen, I love them. We're going to dive in. We're going to experience them. But listen, when I first got here, I would like accidentally end up in a traditions meeting. Oh no. And all these like sententious, self-righteous, pompous people talking about their traditions. But the traditions are not this like, here is what you should do. I am an authority. They are spiritual principles that allow us to meet and function and work together. That is what they are. So it says, when writing or speaking publicly about alcoholism, we urge each of our fellowship to admit his personal name. So letting go of my first name, letting go of my last name, all the names, letting go of that, designating himself instead as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. That idea that if I were to be interviewed, and clearly I should not be interviewed, I have the focus that is not focused. I go a little all over the place. I should not be, and I should not represent nothing. But if there were doing an interview, instead of saying like, listen, Paige, Grand Pumbaa of AA, absolutely not. But it would instead say a member of AA was quoted as saying. So that's what we're talking about. And it is the 11th tradition, baby. Woo! I'm just trying to make it sexy, but not like so graphic like the Zoom bombers, just a little sexy, traditions, woo. So you can make a note, tradition 11. And it goes on to say very earnestly. So with that sincerity, we ask the press also to observe this request, for otherwise we shall be greatly handicapped. That idea of if we did have spokespeople for AA, that would actually hold us back. I was struggling at around the same time Lindsay Lohan was struggling. We were in a bit of a death race. And I always would visualize that idea of like, imagine Lindsay Lohan, the spokesperson for AA. And some of you would be like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Yeah, not a thing. So that is why we don't have one and keep in mind, go to your group conscience, go to your business meeting. Who would want to be the spokesperson? Probably the person that you're like, oh goodness, not them. Don't let them be the spokesperson. So that is why. So it goes on to say, we are not an organization in the conventional sense of the word. And what we're pointing to there is tradition 9. So oftentimes we say that, we ought not be organized. And we say that and we laugh because the coffee wasn't made on time, that sort of thing. Or the tea. I don't know how y'all do it. But that's not really what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is that Alcoholics Anonymous does not have that same organizational structure that most corporations or businesses have. There is not a Grand Pumbaa, king of AA, give me my tiara, I'm running the show, I'm CEO, I'm boss. And then we got the managers, and then the middle managers, and then the lowly employees. What we're saying is that in Alcoholics Anonymous, it's actually the reverse. The most powerful position that you can have, and some of your ears might have perked up, ooh, give me power, is simply member. is simply to be a member. And any role that I take in service is not me climbing this like corporate ladder of success, like give me a promotion. Instead, I visualize it a lot like being at a restaurant. And if I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, then I'm sitting at a table and there are people that are serving me. And when I get involved at service, like getting involved in service at this group, what happens is I then serve the people at this group and the people who are coming to this meeting. And then we go a step further. And I maybe get involved as a GSR and get involved in my local district or my local area. And I'm not just serving the people at my group, but I'm serving the people in my district. So I'm not climbing the ladder of success. I got more tables to serve. So that's tradition 9. That there are no fees or dues whatsoever. And that was the early Genesis, the early idea about tradition 7. That if you go to a gym, which I can assure you, I do not, I am quite squishy, but if you were to go to a gym, you would have to pay membership dues. And a lot of clubs, especially in the 1930s, if y'all grew up watching the Flintstones, they were like in the Moose Lodge or something like that, there were annual fees. I can't remember if it was the Order of the Moose or what it was, but like you'd hear about that. And they would have to pay annual fees. That's not how it is. You don't have to pay anything. If you're a member, it is helpful to make voluntary contributions, but you don't have to pay anything. The only requirement for membership is, and I'm just going to throw it out there, an honest desire to stop drinking. And some of y'all will notice, it doesn't say that anymore. And we all wiped a sigh of relief. Because here's the thing, anyone here come with honest motives? You liars. No, you didn't. Maybe you did. Maybe you did. I'm not going to give you too much crap. But most of us do not do things initially with honest motives. Thank goodness. But all that is required is simply a desire. And the long form explains having a problem with alcohol, but it goes on to say we are not allied with any particular faith, sect, or denomination, and that is tradition 6. We're not affiliated with any religion, any religious beliefs, any denomination. We're simply a group where a bunch of drunks get together and help each other. And then when it says, nor do we oppose anyone, that is tradition 10. That we're not taking sides on any controversial political, social reform issues. We do not oppose anyone. And then it says, we simply wish to be helpful to those who are afflicted. And that is tradition 5. That we very simply want to be of help to those who are struggling and suffering with this illness. And I love that. Now we're going to pick this up, but we're going to pick this up months and months and months and months from now. That we wish to be helpful. That's what we do here. We try to help. We don't fix, we don't manage, we don't save, we don't cure. It's working with others, not working on them. Let me at them, helpful. And if you don't want it, that is okay. And I love that we're going to see that in working with others. We're going to see that later on in the forgotten chapters. And it says, we shall be interested to hear from those who are getting results from this book. So people that are getting sober, staying sober, particularly from those who have commenced, and that is to begin, from those who have begun to work with other alcoholics. And listen, we have not gotten ourselves out of the Roman numerals. We're not even at the foreword to the 2nd edition. We're still in the foreword to the 1st edition. And already, what are we talking about? Spoilers, I got to work with others. I got to sponsor others. If you don't like the word sponsor, that's cool. I got to carry this message to others. That is, it's not optional, which is rude. And they're sprinkling it in early. So it says we should like to be helpful. Again, helpful to such cases. Inquiry by scientific, medical, and religious societies will be welcomed. And in the appendices at the back of the book, there's reference to the scientific, medical, and the religious societies. Now, we're not going to pop over yet. We're going to do a little pop over Will it be today based on how quickly I go through things? Probably not. Probably a next week to the week after sort of deal. Thank you for coming. I love you. And then it says Alcoholics Anonymous. Now let's dive in. Foreword to the second edition. Figures given in this foreword describe the fellowship as it was in 1955. So the first edition, it went out from 39 to 55, and then a second edition was published and this foreword was added. So it says, since the original foreword to this book was written in 1939, a wholesale miracle has taken place. And I'm just going to point something out. And I've done that because I've gone through a whole cycle here. I know y'all have Costco. So imagine going to Costco and get yourself a jumbo Costco-sized thing of miracles. That's what happens. That is what happens in Alcoholics Anonymous. But by the very nature of a miracle, that is something that does not regularly, frequently happen. That is one of those almost 1 in a million sort of struck by lightning, winning the lotto. And we come to Alcoholics Anonymous and we pick them up as easily as we pick up paper towels. And with that same abundance when you get that jumbo pack. That is what happens here. And I do a big book study with my friend Terry on Friday nights. And Terry always says, pew, pew, pew. Yeah, Paul, you know what's up. Pew, pew, pew. I believe in miracles because I am a miracle. I believe in miracles because I am a miracle. And I believe in miracles because I witness miracles. I witness alcoholics who are just as hopeless as me. Alcoholics who are beaten and broken and cannot stay sober. And I witness the light come on in their eyes. I witness not just the days between their last drink, but I witness the change that comes over them. That light, that joy, that happiness, that smile. The people that were intimately acquainted with the square of floor that is in front of them, able to look other people in the eye. The same person that could not be of use to anyone, now helping and sponsoring others. Man, I believe in miracles because I witness miracles. And that's what we get here, miracles. It goes on to say, our earliest printing voiced the hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination. Already, continues the early text, 2s and 3s and 5s of us have sprung up in other communities. And if you want to make a note, we're not going to necessarily pop all the way over there. But what we're referencing is page 162. It's in the chapter, A Vision for You. That's where it's quoting. And so it goes on. 16 years have elapsed between our first printing of this book and the presentation in 1955 of our second edition. In that brief space, Alcoholics Anonymous has mushroomed into nearly 6,000 groups whose membership is far above 150,000 recovered alcoholics. We got some stuff to break down here. So first and foremost, if you're writing in your book, you can underline the word or highlight or whatever you want, the word recovered. Recovered does not mean cured. I would describe myself as a recovered alcoholic. I am a recovered alcoholic. But there will never be a time in my life where I could ever safely drink again. I will always have the allergy of the body. I am a recovered alcoholic. But by that same token, there will never be a time where it is not safe for me to be fully engaged in the way of life that is Alcoholics Anonymous. Because if I stop doing this work, the obsession of the mind will return. And so, recovered does not mean cured. Recovered means the thought that I have when I am as sober as I am today, but the illness is untreated, is relieved, is removed, is taken. And I'm able to live in a position of neutrality. It happens as the result of the 12 steps. And I get to live in that state of recovered as the result of that work and continuing to do that work. And when it talks about in that brief space from like 3 to 6,000 groups that it mushroomed. And I do want to make a fungi joke because I've been known to be a fun guy. Sorry, focus. But you know, if you ever had mold or anything, ooh, that thing spreads, like it spreads. But what I love about the idea of mushrooms and the mushrooming, I mean, it's just saying that it's growing, and it's growing at an exponential rate. That's what it literally means. But I have a brain that makes pictures in my head. So that's what we're dealing with. Picture in my head brain. And what I love about the visual of mushrooms is mushrooms grow in the dark. And where Alcoholics Anonymous meets me, where these 12 steps meet me, where the God of my understanding that I don't like and I don't believe in when I get here, it meets me in the dark. And now I know this is everyone's favorite. Please don't be discomposed. We're going to do some math. I know. Hold on. Math. Ugh. So, when it says 150,000 recovered alcoholics, make a note of that 150,000. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the preface, not preface. You call it whatever you want. We're going to go back to the preface and we're going to do some math. I've lost most of you. It's like, no, I don't want to do math. Don't worry. I'll do the math. You just hold on. So if you were here last week, and if you're here last week, welcome back. And if you weren't here that last week, I'm so glad you're here this week. And actually, this is so ADHD. We record these, and the recordings are available on YouTube and Spotify. And what I'll do is I'll just toss the links. Oop, nope, I don't have them on my clipboard anymore. I will toss the links in the chat later, because that's what I'll be doing. All right. So this is the 4th edition of the book Alcoholics Anonymous. The first edition appeared in April 1939, and in the following 16 years, more than 300,000 copies went into circulation. So we have 300,000 copies of the book and 150,000 recovered members. Some of you are having algebra flashbacks. Come back. This is a safe place. You're okay. I'll do the math. And so what that means is that for every 2 books that went out to the world, there was 1 recovered member of Alcoholics Anonymous. Not every book went to an alcoholic. Not every alcoholic got a book. But what we are seeing is in those first 16 years, a very rough estimate of a 50% success rate. That was those numbers in those days. And again, rough estimate, we're doing rough math. But also we're gonna see that number was actually a little bit higher, not this week, but as we continue on in the forward to the 2nd edition, which, by the way, when I got here, I was like, ew, Roman numerals, gross. No, thank you. But now I'm like, forward to the 2nd edition. That's my favorite forward. Yeah, it's got math. It's got geography. It's got history. Woo! I don't know what happened to me, but a change has come over me. And some of you guys are like, I don't know if I would say what Dr. Silkworth said to Bill, which is anything is better than the way you were. Some of you are like, I don't know if it's better. I'm just kidding. Forward to the 2nd edition. Best forward, yeah. So, what is helpful to understand is when we talk about numbers, when we talk about statistics, what is the percentage of success that I am bringing to Alcoholics Anonymous? 0. I got a 0% success rate. I'll be honest with you guys. If you're hanging out with me on a Wednesday night, you are probably batting a 0. You got nothing, because you'd be doing other things, right? And so 50% is far better than what I've got. But also, we're going to see it's going to be as high as 75%. But here's my experience. My experience is that I have never, and I do mean never, seen anyone who is doing this deal relapse. I've seen a lot of people sit on a 4 and drink again. I've seen a lot of people sit on amends and drink again. I've seen people have powerful recoveries and stop doing the work and drink again. But I have never seen anyone who is fully engaged in these 12 steps as a way of life drink again. And I'm not saying it could not happen. And I know I'm just one silly little drunk. But in my experience, I have never seen it happen. And I'm coming with 0. I'm coming to this thing with nothing in my life has worked. And there's something here that seems to work every single time I am willing to work it. That's that's kind of the sticking point, is I got to actually do it, which is rude. You know, it's like going to the gym. I actually got to work out and do it consistently if I want to get in shape. I don't. I would like cookies. That is what I'd like. It's fine. It's fine. We don't need to criticize my health. I've been going on little mental health walks, so it's fine. It's fine. Alrighty. So going back to the forward to the second edition. So whose membership is far above 150,000 recovered alcoholics. Groups are to be found in each of the United States and all of the provinces of Canada. Represent! And keep in mind, 1955, all of the states, all of the provinces, didn't mention the territories. The Canadians know what it's like to have to color in the Northwest Territories. None of it wasn't its own thing. All those little islands, that was the geography class PTSD that we got, y'all. Canadians know. Sorry to everyone who's like, no, it's not easy to have to color in. Anywho, alrighty. AA has flourishing communities in the British Isles. That's you guys. Rock and roll. The Scandinavian countries, South Africa, South America, Mexico, Alaska, Australia, and Hawaii. And you know what's an interesting thing? And maybe you guys didn't notice this. I've gone through the forwards quite a lot in my day. And there's a point where I was like, wait a minute. It said each of the United States, and then it mentioned Alaska, threw in the whole country of Australia before it mentioned Hawaii. Like, shout out Australia. What up? It's like, what? Like, what? What does that have to, like, what? Well, and the reason is because Alaska and Hawaii weren't yet states. So the book is older than Alaska and Hawaii being states. They didn't become states until 1959. Now, I know in the UK there's a big thing, like a big cultural thing about pub quizzes. That information will not keep you sober, but who knows? Might just help you win the pub quiz. So multifaceted, big book study, you know what I'm saying? So you're like, oh God, let the Zoom bombers back in. That was better. That was better. Oh, thanks for sticking it out. Alrighty. So, all told, promising beginnings have been made in some 50 foreign countries and U.S. possessions. So that would be Puerto Rico, Guam, probably the Philippines at that point. Some are just now taking shape in Asia. Many of our friends encourage us by saying that this is but a beginning, only the augury. And an augury is a prediction of a much larger future ahead. And here's one of the things that I love, that it's like what we are seeing is going from, two drunks, one who was visiting Akron, Ohio, the other was from Akron, Ohio. And I mean, that's how we know God is involved. Now, I love you if you're from Ohio, but how we know God is all over this thing is none of us would have picked Akron, Ohio as the starting point for this worldwide movement. And yet from the rubber capital of America, did it grow into this worldwide fellowship. Goes on to say, now this is where we're diving into the history. The spark that was to flare into the first AA group was struck at Akron, Ohio. That's how we know. In June 1935, during a talk between a New York stockbroker and an Akron physician. And if you're writing in your book, the New York stockbroker is Bill Wilson. The Akron physician is Dr. Bob. And what I love is the spark that was to flare. The real beginnings, the birthplace of Alcoholics Anonymous is not when Bill Wilson got sober. It is not when the first drunk got sober. It is Dr. Bob's sobriety date. Bill Wilson carried the message to Dr. Bob. Alcoholics Anonymous, its date of origin begins with the first successful 12-step call. That is how important working with others is. So what we're talking about is Bill Wilson carrying the message to Dr. Bob. It says 6 months earlier. 6 months. Anyone ever hear you got to wait a year to sponsor? Bill Wilson, 6 months sober. And just so you know, Bill Wilson was sponsoring like he gets out of the hospital, he's trying to work with others. I've got to work with others. and I don't want to wait. So 6 months earlier, the broker, that's our homie, Bill Wilson. Sorry, it's a little early in the big book study for me to be breaking out my Billy Dubs, my homeboy, my guy. 6 months earlier, the broker, Bill Wilson, had been relieved of his drink obsession. So the mental obsession is removed. And this is what did it, by a sudden spiritual experience. And it's a little awkward because it's the bottom of one page and top of the other page. If you're writing in your book, what you can do is you can make a note when it says sudden, it doesn't take long to get well, but spiritual experience, you can write, that is our solution. The solution that we have in Alcoholics Anonymous is a spiritual experience, spiritual awakening. And it says, following a meeting he had with an alcoholic friend who had been in contact with the Oxford groups of that day. Now, the alcoholic friend is, sorry, Rob put in a fun fact in the chat and I didn't realize that. We all get to learn something. This is the only page that mentions the Oxford group. Delightful. Sorry, I will do my best to focus. So following a meeting with an alcoholic friend, and that alcoholic friend is Ebby Thatcher. EBBYTHATCHER. Or as he's known, Throckmorton. Yeah, Throckmorton. Y'all know. And if you're like, I do not know, why is Paige yelling at me? What has happened here? Ebby Thatcher, I found this out a little while ago, that his middle name is Throckmorton. And that, come on. How do you not reference Throckmorton? So Ebby Thatcher, but also in my heart, Throckmorton. So that's who was his alcoholic friend. If you're writing in your book, you can write Ebby Thatcher. And then Throckmorton, if you just want to confuse people at your home group. All right. It says he had also been greatly helped by the late Dr. William D. Silkworth. And that is the doctor who wrote I'll just summarize it like this. He's the doctor who's in the doctor's opinion. That's that doctor, Dr. Silkworth. A New York specialist in alcoholism, who is now accounted no less than a medical saint by AA members, and whose story of the early days of our society appears in the next pages. From this doctor, the broker had learned the grave nature of alcoholism. Now, when it says grave nature of alcoholism, you can make a note that that is our problem. So we have a solution and we have a problem. Now, if we want to break the problem down just a little bit more, the grave nature of my alcoholism is the allergy of the body and the obsession of the mind. We can write that down. Problem, allergy of the body, obsession of the mind. Now we're going to treat the spiritual malady, but we can't diagnose solely off the spiritual malady. So it goes on to say, though he could not accept all the tenets of the Oxford groups. Now, tenets are like the beliefs and the policies and procedures sort of deal. He could not accept all the tenets of the Oxford group. The Oxford group, what their whole deal was about living a life that was surrendered to a power greater than themselves. Their whole deal was about having a deeper experience of, for them it was God. They happened to be a religious organization. Although they were very non-denominational and they had a lot of interfaith stuff that they were a part of. But that idea, what is the tenet that Bill Wilson could not accept? So this is not historically accurate, but this is the lesson that we're trying to glean from this sentence. And if you hang around the history a little while, you'll be like, wait a minute, what do you mean it didn't happen like that? What? I'm shocked. But what we're trying to glean from this is the tenet that he could not accept was organized religion. And that idea of like having a power that we get to decide for ourselves, that's kind of the takeaway. in terms of like, what am I trying to glean? Is that Alcoholics Anonymous is not a religious organization. You get to have a power of your own conception, your own understanding. But a little bit more historically accurate, because I see we got the history husbands. Well, two of them. Well, we always have Rob. So what was the tenet that Bill Wilson could not accept? To be honest, he wanted to work with drunks. And the Oxford group was like, hey, could you like go help some of these other people that aren't alcoholics but might be important and like create this movement? And he's like, no, I just kind of want to work with drunks. And so that's kind of more historically accurate. So even though he couldn't accept all the tenets of the Oxford groups, he was convinced of the need for moral inventory. That sounds like a fourth step to me. Confession of personality defects. That sounds like a fifth step. Restitution to those harmed. Making it right. Sounds like restitution. That's amends. So we got step 4, moral inventory. Confession, step 5. Restitution, step 9. Helpfulness to others. Well, that sounds like step 12. And the necessity of belief in and dependence upon God, well, that sounds like a lot of the rest. You know, you got some 2, you got some 3, you got some 6, you got some 7, you got some 11, sprinkle. We don't really sprinkle in the 10, but like that'll happen when you do your 10. So that's, when we see that, we can make a little note that that is our program of action. And the program of action in Alcoholics Anonymous is the 12 steps. Now, if you're like, girl, this was a little confusing, I am about to either make it better or worse. Gotta do screen share. There we are. So yeah, I will either make it better or worse. So let's talk about how these 3 elements came together. If you want to turn to page 26 and kind of follow along that way, you can. You do not have to. But on page 26, it references a certain American businessman, and that is Roland Hazard III, because he's a fancy pants guy, so he's got a number after his name, the third. So Roland Hazard. And Roland Hazard was an alcoholic. And Roland Hazard came from money and power and prestige, but could not stay sober. And Roland Hazard goes from the best treatment centers. I'm going to use modern language. He goes to the best treatment centers, the best doctors, the best psychiatrists. He cannot stay sober. He then goes and he works with Dr. Carl Jung, who is one of the most famous psychiatrists in the world because he could afford it. And he works intensively with Carl Jung. And he's like, I've got self-knowledge. There's no way that I am going to relapse. I'm going to stay sober. And immediately he gets drunk. He drinks again. And he goes back to Carl Jung. Now, this is the transcript that they have from the meeting that they have, where Roland Hazard said, dude, what the heck? What's up with that, my guy? I'm just kidding. I like to pretend they spoke like that in the 1930s, 1920s. He's like, what happened? And Dr. Carl Jung said, I'm sorry, I misdiagnosed you. You are an alcoholic and people like you do not recover. Roland Hazard feels the gates of hell closing on him with a clang. He experiences that sense of hopelessness. And he says, is there no exception? And Dr. Carl Jung says, yeah, there are. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. And that, in that moment, he gets knowledge of what our solution is, which is a spiritual awakening. And he's like, oh, that's cool. Well, I mean, I go to church and stuff. And Carl Jung is like, my guy, that's not going to do it. That's not going to cut it. You can't hang out in church. I mean, it's great that you go to church because that means you're already open to a belief of a power greater than yourself. But the odds of this thing happening to you are the odds of you getting struck by lightning. To get sober would be miraculous. Now, keep in mind, we've got Costco-sized miracles. Roland Hazard, armed with the knowledge of what he needs to do to get well, or what he needs to get well, he gets in contact with the Oxford group. The Oxford group, although they were not inherently They were not focused on alcoholism. They did sober up some drunks. Bill Pickle was the first guy that they ever sobered up. They were not focused on alcoholics. They were not focused on drug addiction. They were focused on trying to change the world and create these spiritual awakenings, to live a surrendered life. But from the Oxford group, Roland Hazard got knowledge of the course of action, a series of actions that later became our 12 steps. So Roland Hazard knows the solution. He knows what the program of action is, how to get there. And he's going and he's visiting Vermont because he's wealthy enough to, summer in Vermont. And our homeboy, Ebby Throckmorton Thatcher, he was getting into some legal trouble. He had a DUI, crashed into an old lady's farmhouse, rolled down the window and was like, hey, got some coffee? What's for dinner? And then he also got drunk and painted half his house, saw that there were birds, and he's like, don't you poop on my house. I'm going to do the only logical, reasonable thing that you can do when you're 24 beers in. I'm going to get my shotgun and get him. Very illegal. Very illegal. So he was facing some legal problems. And as he's there for court, our guy, Roland Hazard, he shows up. And he carries the message of the solution and the program of action to Ebby Thatcher. And for a while, Ebby Thatcher then stays sober. And he carries that message of our solution and that message of our program of action, the 12 steps, to Bill Wilson. And Bill Wilson had met a number of times before with Dr. Silkworth, who gave us knowledge of what our problem is. The physical allergy and the mental obsession. Now that obsession of the mind is going to be fueled by the spiritual malady, and that is why it is a spiritual awakening that we use to treat the spiritual malady. But what makes me an alcoholic is the allergy of the body and the obsession of the mind. And in this moment, Bill Wilson has the 3 pieces of information that I need to know in order to get sober and stay sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. So I just thought I would screen share that. And if anyone wants that diagram, I can put it in the chat after, because apparently I don't multitask as well as I think I do. Or Rob's already got it. Look at Rob. He's on it. My God, Rob, what up? We're all just here to see Rob. I know that's why I'm here. And so that just kind of puts some pictures of faces to names and names to faces and ties it together. So it says, prior to his journey to Akron, the broker is Bill Wilson, had worked hard with many alcoholics on the theory that only an alcoholic could help an alcoholic. But he had succeeded only in keeping sober himself. And there's a story. And this story is not true. Probably, because there's no, listen, there are some history people that have investigated and they could not find this story. And that's okay. I'm still going to tell it. So this is not a true story, but I'm telling it anyways. Because here's the thing. If you are coming and you're finding out some things that you're like, what do you mean? What do you mean this thing didn't happen the way that I thought it should or could or would? What do you mean? Well, it's important to understand that Alcoholics Anonymous and the history of Alcoholics Anonymous is really parables. They are stories to convey a meaning. And so this is the story. So Bill Wilson, he is working hard with other alcoholics. I know I'm breaking Howard's heart telling this story. He's like, girl, just breaking my heart. It's rude of me. I'm telling it anyways. It's not true. Spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. I got 2 minutes. Gotta wrap it up soon. So, Bill Wilson, he what happens is he's given the knowledge. Oh, the heartbreaking Howard. Oh, I'm so sorry. He's given knowledge of what his problem is. He got that from Dr. Silkworth. When Ebby Throckmorton Thatcher brings him knowledge of the solution of spiritual awakening and the course of action, he goes to the town's hospital. He takes the course of action and has a spiritual awakening. That part is true. He goes out and he carries this message and tries to carry this message to other alcoholics, and he is working hard. That part is true. And nobody is staying sober. That part is true. And after a while, now keep in mind, his wife Lois is supporting him. She's working, she's hustling, she's bringing in the paycheck, and he is doing everything he can to help people, and they are not staying sober. And he sees how hard that Lois is working, and he goes to Lois. He doesn't actually, this is not true. He goes to Lois, and he says, Lois, I see how hard you're working. Nobody that I'm working with is staying sober. I think I just better really focus on work and not spend so much time with these drunks. Nobody's staying sober. And Lois said, she didn't really, the only thing that she could have said, but she didn't say it, which is, but Bill, you stayed sober. And why does that myth persist? One, it's a good story. Two, because I'm not in the results business anymore. I'm in the showing up and trying to carry this message to others' business. The results are none of my business. And so Bill Wilson goes back to Dr. Silkworth and he's like, dude, what up? Why is nobody getting sober? And Dr. Silkworth is like, my guy, are you starting with your white light spiritual experience? Are you dragging these drunks off bar stools and telling them about how the wind of the spirit and the clean wind of the mountaintop and blah, blah, blah? And he's like, well, obviously. And Silky is like, dude, lame, don't be doing that. Why don't you share from your own experience what it means to be an alcoholic? Start there. And the first person he did that with was Dr. Bob. So he had succeeded only in keeping sober himself. The broker had gone to Akron on a business venture which had collapsed, leaving him greatly in fear that he might start drinking again. Doesn't a spiritual experience almost always begin with me not getting what I want? He shows up and he's going to make some money in the rubber capital of America, combining these tire and car companies, and nope, lawyers are involved. But from that, we came into existence, and we get to be sober today. So it says he suddenly realized that in order to save himself, this is an important line, he suddenly realized that in order to save himself, he must carry his message to another alcoholic. If I want permanent, contented sobriety, I have got to work with others. Now that alcoholic turned out to be the Akron physician. And we'll talk more about that next week. So thanks for coming. Thanks for sticking it out. I so appreciate it. And it's over to Peppa. Pew, pew. Wrong big book study, but pew, pew anyways.